Criminally underrated and way ahead of its time, River City Ransom is one of the best NES games out there and one of the greatest beat-em-ups ever made. That, let's be real here, you probably haven't played. And unfortunately, that kind of had consequences for those of us in the West. Right, Drew?
Undoubtedly.
Hey gamers, Spammer D here. So River City Ransom. It is one of the biggest, most badass, cult classic titles on the NES. And I know that alone, I just couldn't do it justice. So I set out to get the biggest names in gaming to help me out. And then I remembered that I'm on a budget, so I settled for RetroDrew.
Couldn't quite afford me either, but I cut him a deal because Spammer D has those magic hands that could beat video games, and one has to be good to beat River City Ransom.
Oh, he's not wrong, ladies. Well, anyway, would you like to tell the lovely people at home exactly who you are?
If you're not familiar with my channel, RetroDrew, I specialize in all things import gaming and cover tons of games that you don't need to know the language to play.
Which is definitely convenient, because knowing about the Japanese games here is relevant. As I mentioned before, us Westerners just letting River City Ransom pass us by is also probably why we missed out on a lot of the games in the franchise.
River City Ransom, known as Street Gangs in Europe and Downtown Neketsu Story in Japan, is the third game in the Kunio-Kun franchise.
Third game? On the NES? Okay, so yeah, I know we've gotten a few games over the years, so sure, I'll bite. How many are there, actually?
As of right now, the Kunio-Kun series is over 50 titles strong, and nearly 4/5 of them were only released in Japan. Like Downtown Special, which Spammer D and I covered over on my channel, so be sure to check that one out.
Okay, well, that is way more than I'd expected it to be. Though it is worth noting that not all of these titles are beat-em-ups. There's actually a few sports titles in there, like soccer and dodgeball, and they're actually pretty fun. And there is no mistaking which franchise you're looking at, as it has carried on that distinct look. I am of course talking about those charming block heads, which they still use even today.
With the only exception to this rule being River City Girls and the SNES title Shin Neketsu Koha Kunio-Tachi no Banka.
Way to ruin the streak, ladies! Though, yeah, this is an awesome game too.
Actually, they all are. But, homing back in on River City Ransom, as that is the game we're here to talk about, I've gotta stress how great this game looks on the NES. While it may not be a graphical powerhouse like, say, Vice Project Doom, the Kunio-Kun games have always gone for their own distinctive style as mentioned above. And the lovable blocky look of River City Ransom is nothing to scoff at, as it lends itself to a memorable, quirky experience. The dazzling backdrops of each fight are the perfect set for these chibi street fights. Nothing like beating on some punks in the park, at a construction site with a giant open fissure, or at the local high school run amok with skids. The playful graphics also turn rather grim locations, like an abandoned warehouse, into bright, cheerful battle arenas. Not to mention lovely little touches like the overdramatic expressions of your enemies as you whip them with a chain or go full ECW on them with a trash can. It's kind of funny how much this downplays the reality of the situation. Thank God for cartoon violence.
Amen to that! Though it's those little touches that really make it shine, like the cute emote you get at the shop. I'll have one smile, please.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure anyone in customer service would definitely hate you for that.
Oh, most definitely. I'd murder them in a heartbeat. Just like these enemies who cry out, "Barf!" as I beat the coin out of them. Did I mention that this game is charming?
You did, but what you left out is how good the music is. The excellent music of River City Ransom tends to bob and weave into various rhythms, from jaunty mid-tempo tracks to punchy in-your-face tunes. No pun intended. Anyways, it's all extravagantly led by those trademark beeps and buzzes of the NES hardware, and is backed by some superlative drums that aren't afraid to get a little wild. While the entire OST maintains this overall kung fu flavor that sounds like it could be 8-bit renditions of a Shaw Brothers score, River City Ransom also manages to incorporate a wide array of genres, including rockabilly and blues, which is quite fitting as blue is the color you'll be leaving your enemies.
Plus, the sound effects are just satisfying as you inflict pain upon your foes. with your fists, your feet, pipes, trash cans, other enemies, and even your partner. Oh, Drew. Behold the power of friendship.
Using me as a weapon aside, the combat is where the Kunio-Kun franchise really shines, because there's so much more here than in your standard brawler.
Oh, most definitely. So many games today incorporate RPG elements, slowly blurring the lines between genres, and River City Ransom is no different. Except that it was doing it back in the early 90s. Like I said, way ahead of its time. And that's not the only way either, but we'll get into that. Still though, even today, beat-em-ups rarely incorporate those elements into their games quite so smoothly.
And despite those elements, the game remains relatively simple. Your girl has been kidnapped, and it's up to two badasses to save her.
Now, where have I heard that before? Oh, and by the way, I didn't edit this song in. There is indeed a Double Dragon cameo in this game.
How, you might ask? Well, it's because both franchises were created by Technos, which shows in more ways than just a cameo. And I'm of course talking about the combat.
Combat in River City Ransom is very similar to Double Dragon. One button punches, one kicks, and pushing them together lets you jump. You can also pick up a variety of weapons and even kick some of them. But if that little cameo battle against the Dragon Twins tells us anything at all, it's that Ryan and Alex have a lot more going for them.
And that's because the combat in RCR evolves the longer you progress. This is where the RPG elements come into play.
Ooh, yeah. As if medical bills weren't bad enough, when you give gang members a round trip to the ER, you rob their asses too. And then you use that money to buy food, music, toys, and books. All of which can either restore your health, let you heal in battle, permanently boost your stats, or unlock special moves, like Stone Fists, Dragon Feet, and Acro Circus, just to name a few. Sadly though, there is a bit of a drawback to all these cool abilities. And that's that the original NES game doesn't have saving. Meaning crazy long passwords for each character. Ugh, you just hate to see it.
Massive oof. But minor annoyances aside, as you progress, you open up more areas to explore and more shops to check out, which you can come and go from as you please.
Yes, and yet another ahead of its time moment, River City Ransom doesn't have stages. Instead, you travel between the different towns hunting down enemy gang leaders and build up cash beating down their lackeys. Though, you probably shouldn't completely underestimate them.
River City Ransom is no walk in the park. While all of the enemies may look pretty similar, the only difference being the color of their shirts, the truth is that different gangs have different fighting styles, and won't hesitate to cheap shot you or turn tail when they know they can't win.
Though the bosses are a different story. They can certainly wreck you if you aren't strong enough. And here's where River City Ransom really breaks away from the genre. This game doesn't have a life system. That's right, infinite lives, no game overs. But don't think for a second that death doesn't have consequences. Because it does. In fact, it's a lot like Dark Souls.
He's not wrong. Death in River City Ransom comes at a cost. That cost being half of your money.
Yeah, they rob your ass back.
Which definitely adds a layer of challenge, since dying can really stunt your growth, causing you to have to grind longer if you aren't careful. Plus, it also entices you to spend more money on food to make sure you're healed at all times, making it tougher to save for larger bonuses. And let's not forget, it kind of plays into a real-life fear. That feeling of concern in the back of your mind when you're carrying a lot of money on you, especially in the bad parts of town.
Pity for everyone else, though. We are the bad part of town. And these factors most certainly add quite a bit of challenge to the game, especially when playing for the first time when you don't know where to go or how to power up. Plus, annoyingly, shops sell a lot, but don't actually tell you what the items do until you've used them. Fortunately though, a lot of the more annoying, grindier issues with the game can easily be alleviated thanks to that one thing that makes all beat-em-ups even better. Co-op.
Of course, most games are better with a buddy by your side. Plus, having two people means you won't get ganged up on, and that you can gang up on the bosses yourself.
Though, you do gotta be careful since team attack is always on. Isn't that right, RetroDrew?
It is? I had no idea.
Oh, I'm aware. Watch as RetroDrew kills me, and then the boss, and then himself. Nobody escapes the wrath of RetroDrew. Not even RetroDrew.
You're damn right. But even team attacks can be beneficial if used right.
Super pro tip! When a player dies, but the other doesn't, the dead player will be revived at full health when the living player moves to another area. With half their cash swiped, of course.
However, there is a trick in co-op mode. When a player dies, if the living player can get to the next area before his teammate blinks away, they'll be revived, without the money loss penalty.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a glitch or not, but it definitely helps with the pacing of the game. Though, if that's not your thing, it's not like you have to do it. And obviously, it's not an option if you're playing single player, making it much, much tougher. But that's also part of what makes the game so great. How you choose to fight and build up your character is completely up to you, and the results are what you're willing to put into them. Something that can't be said for probably 99% of beat-em-ups, making this game an interesting treat and absolutely worth your time.
The graphics are unique with a quaint charm and style to them, the music is fun and upbeat and works well with the genre, but the real star is of course the combat with its classic beat-em-up style, infused with RPG elements and free-roaming environments.
If you like action RPGs, retro games, are looking for a solid co-op experience, and of course if you are a fan of the beat-em-up genre, River City Ransom is an absolute must-play. And while you can go with a classic cart, I'd actually recommend the Nintendo Switch's online NES mode, which has the game for free if you have online, and it comes with online co-op with saving. But whatever you choose, you can't go wrong. River City Ransom comes highly recommended.
And if you can't get enough of River City Ransom, why not swing over to my channel, RetroDrew, where Spammerdy and I cover Downtown Special, a Japanese exclusive which is basically a sequel to River City Ransom, but in feudal Japan. We hope to see you there, or else we'll kick your butts.